technological developments.
Welcome back. Before the break there, I was trying to introduce to us our guest this afternoon on the talking point. He's an oil and gas expert. I've had the opportunity to discuss issues around that industry with him, and he's already standing by ready to dissect our conversation for today, which is the crude oil earning. Join me as I welcome Dr. Wisdom Enang, an oil and gas expert. Dr. Wisdom, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Alfred. Do really appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
It's been a long time since we last spoke, but let me get the conversation off the ground. Recently, before we cascade it to where we're going to, the former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, said 80% of our crude oil is stolen, and I'd like for us to discuss that and bring it to our crude oil earnings whilst we explain what this information we're getting is all about.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. I don't think that figure is exactly correct. I think the way I would put it correct would be saying 80% of some of our productions from some of the wells that we have. And that would be true because if you look at where the center of the theft is going on, that is in our shallow water field, and then we still have the deep water field that has a lot of production. So there is no way we can even get next to 80% when, in fact, most of Nigeria's production goes through the deep water. So I don't think we can get 80%, but it is true that 80% of some of the companies' production quota has been affected. And this has been affected in two parts. The first part is the direct theft, and the second part is the fact that some of the companies have shut off the capability to drill and progress with their exploration and production, simply because that region, which they've acquired their assets, are more prone to theft. So in a nutshell, it's not looking more like 80%. I will put it around in the boundary sites of 40%. Is affected.
Okay, so that clearly stated. How then do we marry that with our recent earnings? Because it looks as though we're recording some very, very commendable gains. Can you explain this crude oil earnings, especially with the recent information being given? Can you give us a sense of what that's is talking about?
Okay, so fantastic. The thing is this, the oil and gas generally, I think the federal government is taking another new look. And I'll tell you some of the drivers of that new look. The first driver is the fact that decarbonization and energy transition is upon us. So whatever proven volumes you have beneath the earth, you cannot take credit for it as long as that is unexplored. It's just there, you have it, but what are you going to do? Now the second thing is this. As we talk about energy transition and we begin to ramp up that conversation, the second thing is what happens if energy transition comes upon us and makes some part of our oil obsolete? And it could be obsolete not because we're not producing, but obsolete because our customers have moved on to more cleaner energy, and perhaps they're only asking for gas and not the oil component. Remember, the oil prices are way higher than the gas prices. So if we're looking at monetizing our assets, it should really be talking about the oil instead of the gas, more of for export earnings. And so what the federal government has done is to do two things. They've tasked the NNPC to go on the offensive when it comes to exploration of new assets. They've also taxed, I think it's time to the licensing renewal. They've taxed all producers that before you can renew your license, you need to show that you are indeed producing at maximum capacity, which has led to the ramping up of production. They've also brought in and this was started in the previous administration, a more practical approach to the security of assets. So that involves an integrated approach between the community, the oil and gas company, and the government working together. So right now you see more of community security working together hand in hand with the police and other joint task force to ensure that they protect the pipeline. So we're having less of the vandalism, more of production, more efforts, conversations are coming up about expanding Nigeria's production. And in a much better way, I think, to crown it all, the presidency has put forward some presidential or executive orders. And that is pushing to make sure that we can have a look at our fiscal incentives to enhance the competitiveness of this particular sector in Nigeria. Now, let me just give you some historical basis. The Petroleum Industry Act has been in the works for about 20 years, and most of the fiscal terms offered have not changed. So imagine passing an act that is over 20 years, and the fiscal terms are as old as 20 years. What do you think, and how would the competitiveness look compared to countries like Guyana, Papua New Guinea? See, for the backdrop of this concern, the president said, okay, we need to have a look at our fiscal incentives and make sure that in complementing the work that we're doing to ramp up production, in complementing the work we're doing to reduce the amount of theft incidents and give Nigeria more oil to sell and more oil for its internal refineries, that we are indeed offering the best return on investment from an investment standpoint. And this is why the president said so. So now the question that comes to mind is this. We all know that the Petroleum Industry Act is already a statute, and this was passed through law. The question we're asking is, what is the implementation strategy? Does the executive order mean that the Petroleum Industry Act is going to be overridden by a simple executive order? Or does this simply mean that it is a signal to investors and regulators to go back and redraft the fiscal incentive, more like trying to redraft the PIA with those provisions that are the fiscal incentives, and then pass it to law again? This is the question. Since this new executive order came out, we're thinking about, fine, you've told us what you want to do, but how and why you want to do it, but we want to know how you want to do it. Are you going to pass through the legislative process, or are we going to take an executive order and override a statute that has already been passed through law?
All right, you talked about there the executive order. How is the executive order affecting the industry? What are the impacts, positive, negative? You want to talk to us about it and how it's helping our earnings? Because at the end of the day, it's about making more money. It's about getting the country to produce more so that we can generate more revenue from the oil sector.
Excellent. I think the executive orders, as I said, is more of a body language of the government, because at the tail end of that executive order, fantastic, it's got good provisions, but the rule of law must be applied. And when you're talking about application of the rule of law, you're thinking, how are you going to translate your intent from a policy standpoint into the law of the land? So we're asking, are you going to short circuit the provisions of the law and replace it immediately with executive order? Or are you going to go through the Senate and the House of Representatives to put out these provisions and pass it? If so, how quickly can you do that? Remember, investors are not, I don't think investors are excited about body language alone. That is half the excitement. The full excitement will come when they operationalize it. What is operationalizing mechanism? We're thinking about how are you going to translate that to the PIA itself? Are you going to revise the PIA? And how are you going to implement that? That is very important. And that's something to watch out for. I think it's very essential, but I like the energy. I like the momentum that the federal government is putting out. But I think that I'm just pointing out areas that we need to iron out so it does not become a policy encumbrance or encumbrances for us ultimately.
Now, this policy encumbrance that you're about, let's examine the policy in itself, because you say it's more of a body language, and You say, quoting you, that it takes more than body language at this point. What then can, jack up our crude oil earnings? Because you also alluded to the fact that there's increased activities. They are busting, they are vandals at the creeks and every form of illegality. Vessels are being arrested here and there. And all of these activities is supposed to encourage investor confidence and increase our crude oil production. So is it a good idea? And if it's a good idea, talk to us about how activities increased our earnings. I must repeat, it's about meter more.
Absolutely. I think one thing we need to understand is we need to separate the original, sort of drive by the federal government and this current drive. So the original drive by the federal government was we need to have more of a ramped production. We cannot afford to just stay by the current quota that we're producing, and that is exactly what is driving the current production. Now, this current executive order is going to solve two things. It is good. The fiscal incentives that are much on the order, provided is very attractive. I think what the federal government needs to do is to translate these and then put out a competitive assessment to say, well, this is what our competitiveness index was previously, but this is what the competitiveness index is going to be going forward based on the revised fiscal incentives. And then when you get people, investors in, one of two things is going to happen. We attract investors, but remember, the oil and gas project that leads all the way from the conceptualization all the way to the production is not something that happens overnight. So think about it. The fruitfulness of this particular policy is going to be, sort of gained in about 2 years, I think, because that's how long it takes for even the most accelerated projects to come to life. But what we are going to see, I think much of a benefit is not going to be more of the oil production. Oil production will ramp up. As a result, we'll have more rekindled interest from the national oil and gas companies. We might be able to, reverse the divestment trends, or particularly, we might be able to have a situation where people that are divesting are not attractive, for example, to gas, which we have lowered, the tariffs and increased the fiscal incentives. But I think what is important to note is, however, that the more of the effect in the short term is going to be a boost to our foreign direct investments. So foreign direct investments is different from earnings from oil, because once you put this out, you're going to have a lot of people come to the table and they're going to bring their FX, and that's going to help cushion the currency market. So I see a short-term gain, but ultimately the long-term gain is going to be increasing our production, production quota, of course, earning more money from oil production.
Now, you're agreeing with me with what I said earlier, but the question again to that effect is the activities that we're currently undertaking, especially with making sure that the maritime space is protected, the joint task force, the operations, the Tantita, and all of that, ensuring that we don't have illegal dealings, taking away our monies. Is that enough? Right? That's the question. Is that enough to show up our crude oil earnings? And is it on a positive direction? Will it give us what we want sustainably?
Yeah, I think sustainability is a number of factors. So we have reducing the oil theft, and then, of course, boosting your production. Because remember, Nigeria is going to a situation where we have mature oil and gas assets. And as those assets begin to mature, we then have a situation where we would need to boost the new fields and put in new fields that boost existing ones. But I think if you're looking for an optimization standpoint, I think we need to get the community more involved, and we need to start from the host community funds, right? Regrettably, about 2 years on, we haven't had much comments around the host community funds. What's going on there? And the more disgruntled that the communities are, the more likely that they will make the job of security much more difficult. So I think if you're looking for an optimization point in the short term, the government needs to really hold the oil and gas operators, both the international oil and gas operators and the national oil and gas operators, responsible when it comes to keeping their commitments as regards the host community funds. But just to answer your question, the combination of factors will get us to our quota point, starting from making sure that we can reduce the amount of theft, to reduce a lot of the sector leakages. By this I mean a lot of illegal dealings. That would boost our production, boost the amount of the quota of the oil and gas produced that heads to the export market and the domestic market. But this in combination to other factors like I've mentioned, including expanding our production, putting the right physical terms, making sure that they implement the host community fund much more effectively, and that is clear, and people can relate to the methodology for the implementation. These are the factors that will come together and boost our production.
Recently, I stumbled by an article, and that article is propping up a question. It talks about the curses and blessings of crude oil, especially with the way that we've dealt with it over the years. I mean, as we're talking about our oil earnings, I want to ask, and I'm asking this question so you can help us. You're the expert here. Is crude oil a blessing or a curse to Nigeria? And whichever part of the divide you decide, hold on, Doc. Whichever part of the divide you decide to take, you must give an explanation to that. So, is crude oil a blessing or a curse?
Crude oil is a blessing, but it has come with, the way we've utilized crude oil has come with several setbacks. Let's even look at the mindset of the average South-South person. You keep hearing a recurring theme when you talk about the need to explore other areas, and they're talking about, well, this is our oil, it's our oil, so if we're not exploring it, who's going to explore it? And I think that's a regrettable approach to it. The second thing is the way we have implemented our exploitation of the crude oil assets, resources rather, has been very, very, I think, regrettable. At the moment, we're only taking advantage of 15% of the oil and gas value chain because we are collecting economic rent. Now, one thing you would be very clear is the moment that you are only collecting economic rent, and the moment that you are not consuming the energy, you're only exporting the energy, you also export the possibility to expand your domestic oil and gas value chain, which again is how we boost our GDP. Remember that the whole talk about oil is only boosting our efforts earnings and accounts for less than 20% of our GDP, because we haven't consumed that energy and because we haven't thought about the utilization of that energy inside. We're only thinking about, we're more hasty towards exporting the energy. And so that regrettable approach has kept us here. Now you're going to ask yourself, what are we going to do from here? I'm going to start by telling you some of the missed opportunities. Before now, there was a windfall, I think it was in the Jonathan era, President Jonathan era. We had a windfall opportunity to develop our oil and gas.
You're referring to the period of the oil boom, I suppose.
And what you're going to see.
You're referring to the period of the oil boom.
Of building, for example, a pipeline is way more today than it was previously, and so you find out that even in the North Sea, that has less of oil and gas resources than us, they have more than 5 times, or more than 5 times the pipeline network that we have, and that's a regrettable thing. Because without the pipeline, you cannot begin to talk about transporting gas from where it is produced locally in the country to where it is required. For example, what the AKK pipeline is trying to do. So you cannot talk about it, and without those pipelines, you're never going to have stimulate the demand that we require because we have production going on for gas, for example, in the Niger Delta, but most of the gas businesses that will utilize this gas are up north. So we have that problem. And so I think it's a blessing, but we have, I think in borrowing what Paul would say, that how long can we continue to stay in iniquity that grace may abound? I think we've stayed so much on the sloppy side of things, hoping that grace will always abound. And this is a wake-up call for everybody.
Dr. Wisdom, I'll have to bring that again. The reason I'm bringing that up, I'm likening it to that article I read. It really opened my mind and expanded my understanding. They did not take a position, though, but they gave the blessings and the curse. And I'm going to put both of them on the table, or the curses as the case may be. Now, first off, over the years, there are countries like Nigeria that have crude oil, and they've advanced. There are countries also like Nigeria that don't even have crude oil, and they have advanced as well. So the reason why I want to bring it to you, the expert in this business, is because we have not really plucked the blessings if we say it is a blessing. We've seen more of a curse in the mismanagement and in the fact that the people who own this oil, their lands are devastated. Maybe you want to give a comment to this before we continue.
Yeah, I think, they put out the points there, but the point remains that Nigeria, right, has benefited, for much of its economy from the standpoint of the crude oil, but I would say it's underutilized. But so I wouldn't agree that it's a curse, because that would be too extreme. I think the way to look at the curse situation would be, I wouldn't say that a negative setback is a curse. What I would call a curse would be something that is completely counterproductive. For example, what is going on in Venezuela, where they've used the oil, but then, of course, completely neglected other sectors. Now, I have to tell you this, right? Look at our GDP. Our GDP is one of the largest in West Africa, and of course, even in the Africa, and the largest in West Africa. So that shows you that we have done something. It may not have been as a result of crude oil, but that's the beauty, that we still have people. I have to help, our Igbo brothers, you yourself as well. They're very entrepreneurial minded. And I think this has deepened our GDP. The only regret that we have is that the crude oil has not contributed much to that GDP story. But it doesn't mean that we sat there from the east to the west to the north part of the country and the south, waiting for crude oil. I think agriculture is deepening our GDP. Business, as we have our Igbo brothers, have deepened our GDP. And so I wouldn't say it's a curse, because the nation hasn't come to a halt simply because oil and gas is there. I think what has happened is this. We've deepened our GDP with other sectors of the economy, but we haven't expanded our export capabilities beyond the oil and gas. Then if you look at that, that's a negative setback, not a curse.
We'll come back to you, Dr. Wisdom. There is a video by Akumi Adeshina of the African Development Bank. There was a particular outing he attended where he spoke about the oil situation, about the situation in this country. And he alluded to the fact, something I said before, about Nigeria having oil just like other countries, and how other countries have developed and we're grappling with development. And he pointed out in that video some of the issues. Let's take a listen to that video. We'll be right back. Please stay tuned.
Additional. Let me now turn to the theme that I've been asked to speak about today. And that is for the world to respect Africa. Now, the first thing that I want to underline is that respect is never a given. It cannot be purchased. It must be earned. And it is earned based not on rhetoric or request, but based on action. Concrete action. Consistent action over time. Saudi Arabia has oil, as does Nigeria. Kuwait has oil, as does Nigeria. Qatar has abundant gas, as does Nigeria and other countries. Yet Nigeria is the country with the largest share of its population living below extreme poverty line in 2023 in Africa. That is not a gold medal that we should be proud about. Clearly, there is something fundamentally wrong in our management, or rather mismanagement of our natural resources. It is also clear that if we continue to mismanage these natural resources, we will remain stuck. I have urged African governments to stop securing loans backed by their natural resources. And that's because those natural resource-backed loans are not transparent. They're expensive. They make debt resolution very, very difficult. If that trend continues, it will be a disaster for Africa. If we manage our natural resources well, Africa has no reason to be poor. We have $6.2 trillion of natural resources. So how in the world are we poor? We simply need to pull up our socks, stamp our corruption, and manage our natural resources in the interest of our countries and in the interest of our people. And let me say, the resources of a country does not belong in the pockets of powerful and rich individuals. It belongs for the state to be used for the benefit of the people of that country. There must be accountability on our natural resources. I wonder sometimes when people go around and say, well, I've actually helped, we put a borehole in a state, or pull a borehole and it's on national television. The very fact that you're actually installing boreholes is an indication of government failure. Because in 21st century, every single house must be having pipe-borne water. So there's nothing to be really delightful about in trying to do that. And we should get away from this feeling of leaders feeling that they are doing public good. No. Leaders must be held accountable for the resources of the people.
Nigeria is a great country, blessed with human and natural resources. Born on October 1st, 1960, and like a child who's grown into an adult, has faced her own share of challenges. But Nigeria has the capacity to fulfill her destiny. With great minds and great leaders, a bright future is guaranteed. Though tribes and tongues may differ, her beauty is in the diversity. Her power is in the unity. Nigeria, our country, is for you and for me. Let's make it the Nigeria of our dream. Advocate Broadcasting Network, a part of you.
Hello everybody! I'm Nena.
And I'm Gigi.
Welcome to Enang Season 2!
The place to find out about the world we live in
and the creatures that we share our planet with.
Join us on the most exciting adventures across the African continent.
See breathtaking wildlife, stunning landscapes,
And out of this world technology.
meet incredible scientists,
And learn fantastic facts.
explore, discover, be amazed.
Be part of the next generation of African change makers.
Be a part of Enang, Africa's #1 science discovery program. Yay!
We're learning every day. And you need the
This is Event 360.
My name is IT Dennis.
My name is Bucci.
I'm Nathaniel Bassi.
Hey everybody, this is Sonny Badu.
My name is Ahmed Bishop Omo.
This is your boy Kenny Black.
I'm Hezekiah Walker.
My name is Hilda Bassi.
Hi, my name is Emmanuel, BBN Season 6 finalist, Mr. Africa International. Keep watching Event 360.
Keep watching Event 360.
Keep watching Event 360. Don't touch it. With Zaddy.
While you're on board, keep watching Event 360.
Keep watching Event 360.
Keep watching Event 360.
Event 360, anytime, any day.
Keep watching Event 360.
I need you to keep watching Event 360.
Keep watching Event 360.
Keep watching Event 360. Don't go away.
Remain favored, remain lifted, and keep watching Event 360.
Keep watching Event 360.
Event 360. Keep watching.
Keep watching Event 360.
Keep on watching and never stop watching Event 360. Do not touch that dialogue.
All right, let's welcome back from that interlude there. I needed to establish something with that Akumi Additioner's video, and it speaks largely to what we're talking about. Dr. Wisdom, are you there?
Loud and clear.
Okay, so from that video, Dr. Akumi Additioner, he alluded to the fact that just like Nigeria, he pointed out a couple of countries that have oil. And I mean, look at it. Some of these countries have gone, most of these countries, let me not even say some, they've gone way beyond, way ahead of us. That's why I asked the question, is crude oil a blessing or a curse? Because he talked about mismanagement of resources. And if something that is supposed to be a blessing and people do not enjoy that blessing, is that blessing not a curse? In that we're not earning enough from our crude oil then?
No, as I said, I like to look at the cup half full and half empty. Crude oil is not a curse because, as you've said, if you want to look at it, it's, before we can say it's a curse, that means it's a resource that brings bad luck. But that's not true, because in other countries it's brought tremendous good luck, but we haven't quite used it. But I like to dwell more on the positive side. The positive side is that we still have an opportunity, although right now the conversation that is more central towards energy transition, but we still have an opportunity. And with benefit of hindsight, I think we can do better, but it's going to take a collective approach to do that. So based on that, I think I still maintain my position that it's not a curse. It is just that we have failed to use it in the right way, just like I've identified, and potentially we have used it in a way that portends a curse rather than a blessing to us. But the product itself, the entire resource, is not a curse.
As a parting shot, so that we conclude this conversation, I really wish we didn't have some technical glitch there. It would have given us the opportunity to, speak some more. But let's get this clear. As your parting shot, what would be your advice?
Well, the parting shot is...
Hold on, Doc. Hold on, Doc. I had not finished, Doc. I had not finished. I said, what would be your advice so that we tap the blessings of crude oil earnings, so that this same crude oil that you say is not a curse can continue to be a blessing for us, so that above all, we stop borrowing? That's my concern.
Yeah, we're having a little bit of technical glitch, but I think, okay, so you're talking about what we can do to make it more of a blessing, and I should put it in my parting shots. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, I think, there's already a positive signal from the, economic managers saying that, of the country, saying that we need to get better fiscal incentives. And then, of course, I think they need to have a conversation to make sure that whoever is going to be saddled with the responsibility of implementing the various aspects of the fiscal incentives is going to be very clinical. I see one thing that has happened that is giving me joy is the cut down the contracting cycle. Let me give you context. It takes about 2 years previously, to be able to do one particular contract in the oil and gas sector. Now we're having the joy of hearing that we're going to decrease that to 6 months. So I think, and deepen the contribution of the oil and gas to the local content. So I think that's a good thing. I just ask that we expedite what we're doing. Time is not on their side. Our investors are taking final investment decisions in different jurisdictions globally. But in addition to all of that, I do ask that the government be very intentional and walk the talk on the recent policy. And as we handle that policy language, body language, and translate it into the statute through the National Assembly, I think I would advise the government to quicken that part, because it's been 20 years in the working of the Petroleum Industry Act, and I hope it doesn't take more than a year to implement the executive orders.
Dr. Wisdom Enang, oil and gas expert, it's always wonderful talking to you. How time flies when we have such very engaging and enlightening conversations. I will be talking to you pretty soon as we continue to monitor developments in the oil and gas sector. We'll be asking your expertise when and where needed. Thank you again, Dr. Wisdom.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
Always a pleasure talking to you. Now, with that particular conversation there with my guest, Dr. Wisdom Enang, I'm going to leave with a question. Same question I posed to him. Are we deriving the benefits from our earnings from crude oil? If we are, then we should stay on course. If we're not, then we need to do what we can to make this crude oil a blessing and not a curse. Thank you so much for being a part of the program. Let's do it again tomorrow. Until then, I'll leave it a prayer. God bless Nigeria, and a salute to you, the viewer. I am Ike Chukujue. Bye for now.
Let's talk security, current affairs, governance, politics, your view, elections, rule of law, economic issues, foreign events on the Talking Point. Talking Point, weekdays on this channel.
Market or whatever they are trying to run, the child may